Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Long time no see. I've been working so much in the lab and I feel like I haven't filmed in just actually a million years, but today I thought I would do another video where I just talk about my eyeshadow palettes, as I just love to do. I will never tire of figuring out ways to talk about the eyeshadow palettes that I own. And so today I thought I would do a video talking about the palettes that I think are worth every penny. We got some alliteration going on, not really, because it's just two words in the sentence, but so basically palettes that, regardless of their price, I have no qualms about how much I spent on them. I would buy them for the same price again. There's no part of me that's like, you know, I don't really know if like it's really worth this much money, or maybe like just wait to get it on sale. Like palettes that I think are worth it full price, which I buy, I would say 75% of my makeup that I buy on sale. Like rarely do I ever feel like any palette is worth full price, but basically palettes that I just love, that if they were gone from my collection, I would immediately, for most of these palettes, go and rebuy them. There's like no doubt in my mind that they're worth the amount that I paid for them, basically. Or if I bought them on sale, that they'd be worth full price. Like basically palettes that are worth the money. And I don't know. Because I feel like so often I talk about palettes and I'm like, you know, wait for a sale. Is it really worth it? Because makeup is just ridiculously expensive and it's just so marked up that honestly 90% of the time I feel like palettes are not always worth the money. But these are the palettes in my collection that really stand out, that every time I use them it goes through my mind like, I'm so glad I bought this. And so let's just hop right into it. So the palette that really truly inspired this video, and that I've said this about multiple times, it's the McGrath Celestial Divinity palette. This is fucking beautiful. I love this so much. Every time I use this on my channel, I'm like, this is worth it. And this is a full price, it's $100. I got this with like a 10% discount, but with shipping and like taxes and stuff, it worked out to basically be $100. There is nothing about this where I feel it wasn't worth $100, and I would pay that price over again. I didn't shit on McGrath, but I talked about her brand in a video a couple months ago, and I was just like, I just don't feel like it's worth the money. And this obviously isn't like her $170 10 pan eyeshadow palette. You get 18 shades and it's $100 Canadian, so it's still fucking expensive, but it's just so beautiful. The shimmers and metallics in here are like nothing else. They're so sparkly, and the way that they catch the light is so beautiful. The mattes are beautiful. I love this palette. I'm inspired every time I look at it, every time I use it, every time I look back on looks that I've done. I'm like, beautiful. Now to move on to one of my favorite eyeshadow brands, a brand that I feel like kills it every time, and that no matter what I've bought from them, even though they're really expensive, I just feel like they're just so good. And it's Melt, and the palettes that I own from Melt. First off, the Amor Eterno collection. This was their holiday release last year, and I am so happy that I have both of these. Like I don't have FOMO when it comes to life, but I have major FOMO when it comes to makeup, and that really inspires a lot of my purchases, unfortunately. This Muerte palette I got for Christmas last year. I'm so happy that I did. This is such a beautiful color story. Melt is literally, they just kill it every time. Like, if you want an example of a brand that's really doing it fucking right, it's Melt. And everything from the color story to the packaging of these palettes is beautiful. Melt shadows are really hit or miss. I personally love them. I love the depth in this palette. Finally, a colorful, deep palette, which is almost unheard of. I'm so happy that I got this, and the depths of sadness in my soul that I would feel if I didn't have this in my collection is just too much to even think about. And the Vida palette I got pretty late in the game. I got it in the spring, I think, like kind of as they were starting to like dwindle in their availability. Again, I'm so glad that I got this. This is such a beautiful color story. Again, obviously way brighter than the Muerte, but so just beautiful. And it just makes my little completionist heart so happy to have both of these palettes in my collection. The amount of times that I go into my collection and I just open these palettes and stare at them is frankly ridiculous. And then again, every palette video that I make, this palette is in it, but it's because it's like my dream. Melt Gemini. I'm not going to talk much about this, but it's so expensive for a half neutral, half green palette, but I've already gotten my use out of this. This is my go-to neutral palette. This is my go-to green palette. Beautiful. I would buy this 100 times over. I love this so much. Another brand that I just love and that I adore so much, Kaleidos. All of my palettes from Kaleidos are worth the money. These are not as expensive as Melt or Pat McGrath by any means. These are, I think it's $60 or $70 US for a bundle of 3. So definitely not too bad at all. Maybe a little expensive for a 6-pound eyeshadow palette, but to me, it's so worth it. Everything from the packaging of these palettes to the color stories to the formula is just unbeatable in my opinion. This is the Astro-Pink. They're impeccable, and I think I just might bite the bullet and buy the Escape Pod collection, or not the collection, the palette, because I know that it didn't get super great reviews, but I know that it's limited edition. Just like everyone who didn't buy the Deep Sea Luster palette from Kaleidos is like kicking themselves in the ass. I don't want to be that person with the Escape Pod collection and not have it. This is the Cyber Browns. This is the neutral one, and then this is the green one. I honestly haven't heard any bad reviews about Kaleidos except for the Escape Pod palette, but I just think if you want to buy them, to me, they're worth every cent that I paid. They're worth it. Okay, if I'm in a different position, it's because I had to take a break because my girlfriend was cooking too loudly, but we're back. We're on track again. So the next palette that I have to talk about is another one that I just can't shut the fuck up about, and I love it so much. Colored Raine Safari Raine palette. I bought this immediately on its like relaunch in the summer. I think it launched in July, and ever since then I've become just the ultimate fan of Colored Raine's formula. I love them so much, and specifically this palette is everything to me. This color story is perfection. I love it. It is like simultaneously a more curated and extended version of Melt Gemini, because you have the mustards, you have the mossy greens, but you also have this teal, you have this beautiful taupe shade, you have this beautiful like fiery orange. It's perfect. It's just everything. I love it so much. And I can't even remember the price of this because I would pay it over again. I think it's like $30, but it's just so beautiful. I love it. There's no part of me that wishes I bought this full price, and I think every other thing I bought from Colored Raine has been on sale, but this I bought full price. I would pay it full price for this again. Okay, so I couldn't do a palette video without mentioning Love of My Life, Juvia's Place. And I've narrowed it down to 4 palettes that, of all the palettes that I have from Juvia's Place, these are just worth the money. I mean, it's what this video is about, isn't it? The Saharan, I love this. It's such a beautiful color story. It's so unique. I love all the shades in here. It's so beautiful. And I love it so much. I wore this palette for my graduation from university, from undergrad, and I think it is perfection. I think if you like color, if you like neutrals, you're gonna like this. So good. It's so good, and like one of the most underrated and just worth every single cent I paid for it. The Tribe palette, one of the most unique palettes I've truly ever seen. If you love green eyeshadow, if you want to get into green eyeshadow, 100% recommend this palette. This is a green eyeshadow palette done right. There's depth to this. There's a range of tones and shades. You have some oranges to make it interesting. This Coro shade, this duochrome, is so beautiful. I love this. Anytime I want to do a green eye, I almost always reach for this. And then the Masquerade Mini. This has like me set for jewel tones. Whenever I need a jewel toned like metallic, I reach for this almost without fail. There's just nothing beats this formula, and the depth of these metallic shades, especially the top 2 rows, are just so beautiful. I guess the Saharan too should be on here because I talk about it all the time, but I think because I talk about it all the time, I didn't really want to include it in this video, but that is also worth every cent that I paid for it. And I would truly be remiss if I made a palette that's worth every penny video and I didn't include the Warrior 2. I've gotten my money's worth and then some out of this palette. I reach for this at minimum once a week. I just love this palette. It has deepening shades that I grab for if a palette that I'm using doesn't have those deep shades. It has a black, it has a white, it has a neutral transition shade. It's beautiful. I love it. I honestly would recommend this to anyone who maybe is trying to build up their makeup collection or is just a makeup lover in general, because I'm not gonna lie, like, I didn't think that I needed this palette when I bought it. It's an all matte, like semi-neutral palette, but I've gotten so much use out of this. I cannot sing the praises of this palette enough. Now we have 2, well, they're not problematic per se, just 2 palettes from brands that I don't really love anymore, but that I still love these palettes, and I have no regrets over purchasing these at all. Colourpop Good Sport. I'm so happy that I bought this. I'd been lusting after this for so long before I bought this, and eventually I just decided to do it, and I'm so glad. This is again like another palette that I feel like I'm kind of like bragging a little bit that I had these palettes, but this is another palette that I hear that people regret not buying because it was limited edition and it's gone. This is such a beautiful color story. I think Colourpop really hit it out of the park with this one. I have so many thoughts and feelings about Colourpop as a brand, but now it's not the time that I'm going to get into that. But I just love this palette. I think it's beautiful, and I'm so happy that I have this, and it was worth every single cent that I put into this. Another one that I'm so happy that I bought this again full price, like very soon after it launched, and I have no regrets. It's the ABH Jacquiana palette. Really not a fan of ABH anymore, quite honestly, but this palette is so beautiful. I just love everything about it. Very, I will say, similar to the Pat McGrath Celestial Divinity palette. So if you have this and you are wanting to get that one, definitely similar vibes and a lot of similar shades and tones. This is beautiful. I love this. This is just, to me, a very close to perfect, like half neutral, half colorful color story. And then the last one was one that even surprised me, but I gotta put it in here. This is gonna be really random, but it's the Tarte Tarteist Pro palette. I surprisingly, despite all of the shadows that I have in my collection, still reach for this surprisingly often, mainly for these deep mattes. Like this row, I don't even know if you can see it because this palette is so reflective, but this like row of deep mattes here, I, believe it or not, don't have a ton of like deep purples or burgundies in my collection. You'd be shocked to find based on all the pans of shadow that I have, but really, like, I even used this deep purple today. If I need a deep purple, I almost without fail reach for this palette. I still think that the shadows perform well. There are like a lot of light transition-y tones in here with the first 2 rows, so maybe it's not going to be the most applicable across the board in terms of skin tone, but I think for me, I have gotten so much use out of this palette. It's been so worth the money. I got this as a present, but if this palette left my collection for whatever reason, I think I might even buy this full price. And that is shocking to me because Tarte is a brand I really don't feel passionately about at all. But this palette I really feel passionately about, and it's an old release, but one that I still feel is relevant. And I think this would be another palette that if someone didn't want to go the indie route, they wanted to buy something from Sephora, from a more mainstream, more accessible brand, and they didn't have a ton of makeup already, they were looking for a palette that's going to kind of cover them across the board in terms of neutral, dabbling in color, I would point them in the direction of this palette just because it's so versatile. You can go so many colorways with it. It's just really, really nice. And that is it, folks. Thank you for humoring me on yet another palette video. I will never tire of talking about my palettes, and I will never tire of hearing other people talk about their palettes. And these are palettes that really, truly, they're, like I said in the intro, there's no part of me that feels buyer's remorse over these palettes. And frankly, if I'm looking deeply into myself and being frank, there are a number of palettes I buy, I think, maybe this didn't necessarily add that much to my collection. I bought it for X, Y, and Z reason, not because it's going to be the most unique, groundbreaking color story, or maybe I look back at it and thinking, I really haven't gotten that much use out of it. This wasn't a necessary purchase for me. I should have bought this on sale, or I'm glad I bought it on sale kind of thing. There's nothing. I feel no feelings. I think every time I use these palettes, I'm like, God damn, this is so good. This is worth the however much money I paid for it, which I feel is kind of a rare thing. For me anyway, and I feel a lot of other people as well. Let me know if you like this video, if you have any other ideas from what you want to see from me. I have a lot of ideas of stuff that I want to film. I'm just really so strapped for time. I hope that I will be able to film more in this coming week, and also just editing. Filming is less the issue, the motivation to edit is more of the struggle that I'm having. Anywho, I hope you have a great day. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye. I can never have enough ways of different combinations of eyeshadow palettes to talk about. That doesn't make any sense. And it just, a little maybe expensive for a 5, how many shades are in here? 6, Jesus. And I think just everyone, I've gotten my money's worth and then some.